Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything from the Pistons to the NBA draft tonight and the Motor City Cruise.
And just like you mentioned, so we are live during the first round of the NBA draft, and man, do we have a long list of guests with us this evening. We got Sean Court, managing editor at Detroit Bad Boys, Brady Fredrickson from Detroit Bad Boys, Kyle Metz from Detroit Bad Boys, and Justin Lambrexi, hopefully I said that correctly, also from Detroit Bad Boys. So guys, we got like dang near the entire DBB crew here with us. Blake, I am pumped. This is going to be a good show tonight.
Yeah, I'm excited. Long draft cycle, a little more, I guess, underwhelming, you can say, as some other years. I mean, obviously nothing like last year where we had Wembanyama at the top, but a ton of good players. Excited to see where everyone lands, what the Pistons do. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, for sure. And we got a little bit of news just right off the top. Just shortly before the draft actually started, Nick Claxton, who is a free agent from the Nets, formerly a free agent, that the Pistons have been kind of linked to, has been re-signed by the Nets. 4 years, $100 million. Kyle, you're our cap guru. Why don't you just really quickly what kind of that means for the Nets, and then we can all talk about what that might mean for Detroit with any potential Donovan Clingan connection.
Yeah, so essentially when the Nets sent out Bridges, it's going to be a similar amount of salary, just over that 25 million. And so really they kind of made space for that in their cap sheet for signing Claxton to stay kind of where they're at in terms of the luxury. I haven't run their numbers directly, but I think it keeps them in a good position. Obviously they brought in Bojan as part of that deal, and that's gonna be a fully guaranteed. And so they'll probably be looking to make some moves. I would say because they brought in Bojan, so that's 20 million they had added to the situation for them. So look for them to move on from Ben Simmons or try to shed some salary because they don't want to be expensive as they're trying to tank, really. So they'll be trying to stay under the luxury tax, which I don't think it'll be hard for them to do, but you can that's what we can look for.
Kyle, let's talk about this James Edwards, the third notification, because the Pistons are on the clock right now. There are 2 minutes left, and there's not been a peep. Wait.
Is on.
Wait. His Woj audition.
Laz Jackson.
Yeah, this is a
the pick is in.
This is a spicy one.
No.
For any of our viewers, let's wait until it goes on the broadcast, just so we don't spoil anyone's viewing experience. But this is spicy. Sean, do you have any final thought? I know you're probably going to pop off to write a story and come back on. So what are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking because I see that Woj says they're keeping the pick, so the person will not be involved in a future trade, seemingly. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of big swing on talent that we're talking about a team needing to take if they want to do something. Now, you could have said the same thing about a Jaden Ivey selection, a Killian Hayes selection in the past. I mean, I will say, and then I'll pop off, if there's a player that surprises with excellence, he's among the contenders to do that, to like transcend where he's at now and where he could go in the future. So
I don't know.
And
I don't know what this is.
Pistons fans.
Break the news.
It's allegedly it's Ron Holland.
That's not bad. You know what I said today? if there's one person in this draft that I am fully prepared to eat like a gigantic plate of crow on, it's Ron Holland, because Ron Holland does have all those little skills, like elite athleticism and skills that, like, if it coalesces right and you can develop a player, like, you hit the lottery. But, like, I don't think he's any good. So, like, I don't know. He's not good yet, but, like, oh, man.
I wish Laz was here.
Yeah, this is Laz's guy.
Yeah, well, that's never turned out bad for the Pistons before, so I will hop off and I will hop back on in the future.
All right, we'll see you. We'll see you, Sean. Happy writing.
Blake, give us the Ron Holland rundown, because apparently they are keeping the pick. I mean, it could be a front, I guess. We don't know, but give us some Ron Holland content here.
Okay, so Ron Holland was like one of those guys who was at the top of the board coming into the year. Him and like Isaiah Collier and even Modest was up there. And then just his season with the Ignite, it didn't go great by any means. I mean, really for anyone, but Ron, like the biggest concern with him, I mean, now that he's a Piston, is he gonna shoot it? Personally, I think I buy Modest's shot before Ron's, but I don't think Ron's shot is broken by any means. He did have a year at the NBA 3-point line. He did turn the ball over a lot. He improved in that as the year went on. But at the same time, he was asked to do a ton for the Ignite, really like that primary initiator role. But he's super athletic. He's active on defense. So I think you're getting a two-way player who, like Brady was saying, like Ron is the guy who, if someone comes out and is a star in this draft that surprises us, I think it could be Ron. And truly, if Cade is the only person that this front office is tied to, the pick of Ron Holland makes sense to me. If everyone else is staying around or who else they're adding, but I did not think they were going to make this pick, but I don't mind it. Yes, you want someone that has more of that shooting pedigree, but right now there really isn't that player on the board other than like Dalton Connect or Jared McCain. And it seemed like this pick to them was too rich to go that route. I'm guessing if Connect was an option, like they like taking the swing more on Ron, which I understand as well.
If Ron played at the University of Texas this year instead of the G League Ignite, I think collectively we would look at this pick and be like, oh, hell yeah, that guy was like, he scored 45 points against Oklahoma. Remember that in November? Like, that's the thing is the same thing with Matas. And I feel like Matas's problem was his agent. And like, that's why everybody in this community soured on him. But like both those guys were just put in horrible situations with that team, having like one shooter, John Jenkins, and a bunch of dudes outside of Tyler Smith who were just like terrible NBA players. So like it's hard to hold it against him. But like I think I don't know who I talked about this with, but like Ron can't shoot, Asar can't shoot, Jaden can't shoot. Like you can go on the list, and I'm just like, it's hard for me to like look at all these dudes and think they're all going to be here for the long run and say that, yeah, Fred Vincent's going to fix all of them. Like he's a shooting coach, an extremely good elite shooting coach. He is not like the Pope or Mother Teresa. He's not a miracle maker. Like he's not going to go through and fix all of this. And I would imagine in the scheme of things, like Ron's probably like what, a 2-3 kind of guy. I know he played the 4 in high school, but like, does he infringe more on Jaden's role, or does he infringe more on Asar's role? Like, we have no idea what, Trajan thinks of those guys. But I think that's the other interesting part of this is like, where are you going to pour all your resources into? Obviously, Ron's top of the list, I think, at this point with Cade. But like, whose job is he coming for?
Yeah,
honestly, sorry, Blake, if I could jump in. So I'm going to read off his stat line. So this is from the G League Ignite page, but 20.6 points. He shot 44% from the floor, 24% from 3 on 3.6 attempts, 76% from the free throw line on 5 attempts, which is actually ridiculously good when you remember that the G League does the 1 for 2. Yeah, they only do 1 free throw. So that he drew like 5 fouls a game, basically. It's kind of ridiculous. He averaged 6.6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers, so he was 1-to-1 there. He did average 2.5 steals and about a half a block per game. I think like if you're going to hang on to some hope for shooting, the fact that he did shoot 76% from the free throw line on good volume, pretty solid. I don't think just by watching him that the form is incredibly broken. Like it's not like when we were watching Asar Thompson's tape when he was with OTE and you just look at that jump shot and you're like, yeah, there's a lot to work on here. It is better, and he did shoot better than a Star Thompson shot last year. But like Brady, to answer your question, I feel like this is coming at a Star Thompson's expense. Like if you want to put players next to Cade and they're not, two of them aren't going to be fantastic 3-point shooters. You really want them both to get to the free throw line a lot. And that is something that both Jaden Ivey and Ron Holland appear. It seems like Ron Holland anyway. Jaden Ivey, we know they're both very good at it, or project to be very good at it. So, I mean, I'm Justin, Kyle, I'm interested if you agree, disagree here. Like, is this kind of slotting over Asar, Ivy, someone else? Like, what do you guys think? What's your take on this one?
Sorry, I was catching up on notifications. I don't really know. Like I haven't done a bunch of deep dives into some of these guys. And obviously, I listened to a lot of stuff, but I haven't done a lot of work on my own. Wes, that knowing smile. I was ready, excited for you.
Yeah, Brady would have been worth it at 5. That's all I'm saying. Continue, Kyle.
I think it's really hard because it's another guy that, he's 6'6", just under 6'7". It isn't small, but again, like if he's playing up, that's small, right? So you're hoping that he can slot into that 2 or 3 and cover, play defense and do all those things. It's just interesting. I'm still processing from a roster construction and just like an asset management side. But for all intents and purposes, the dude's a bucket and it's something we need. If he can shoot, that unlocks a lot of stuff. But I do think, one of Asar or Ivy, man, I also see why Grimes has been in rumors for THJ, right? Like, because where does Grimes fit in? And again, he's a minor piece. It does not, we don't need to be losing sleep over what happens to him. But like, you can start seeing though, like, they have a couple of those guys in that range. So you only have so many minutes. And for all intents and purposes, it doesn't like they're going to be like playing all the young guys. So someone's going to lose their spot and someone's probably on the move.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I guess one thing to consider is like in the context of the roster, like obviously Trajan said he wants to develop the young guys in his press conference and all that stuff, but like at the end of the day, like these guys that were drafted before he's here aren't his guys. So I don't think he's gonna let Jaden Ivey or Asar being here dictate what he's gonna do. Like if the guy he likes in the overlaps position, then he's probably gonna go ahead and do it. Like obviously something's have to give to make them all fit, but like I think that's important to consider when like the rationale behind the pick. Like he's not tied to anybody that was here before because they weren't drafted by him. In terms of like the fit of Holland, I think it's kind of similar to why I liked Cody Williams. Like obviously there's a base there, but like it's gonna take a lot offensively for it to like really hit. But I think he'll be a good defender, like right away, kind of like Asar was last year, and kind of play a similar role where it's like a lot of just like basket cuts, not relying on him to be a shooter. But then again, like if you're playing all the young guys together, that's going to be like just bad for everybody. But I guess one thing I will say about Holland too is like he's probably going to fit well with the Pistons because he played in such a just dumpster fire of a G League Ignite team last year to where he's used to playing in a dumpster fire offense. So maybe like he's used to it already. So I guess that kind of helps in that case. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it all fits together. But I don't really think in terms of like just the roster context. Like, I don't think Trajan really cares because it's his guy. Who cares about guys already here?
I think you're right. Like the fit on the raw, like I said it today. People were talking about fit, and like every Bezelis mock draft, which was 95% of them today, like was like, well, he just fits, and like their fit is irrelevant because the guy who's picking did not build the roster. So I mean, yeah, you're right, Justin. I feel like it's just one of those things where like, who does he want Trajan around Cade and an athletic, because the thing about Ron Holland is like, yeah, the jumper's like a little wonky, and I think his shot selection was terrible, and his role in usage, like I think his usage was close to 30% this year. Like it should never be that high in the NBA, which will be good because I think that's one thing we always kind of take a blind eye to is you look at a guy's usage in college or whatever league, you take that down, their efficiency rises, their ability to play the other aspects of basketball get better because they're not just gassed by being the primary initiator. Like the kid was a power forward in college or in high school, and then he came in and had to be the de facto initiator because that's just what that terrible team needed. And like defensively, he's pretty rough in terms of like an individual defender, but like watching him make like opportunistic plays, like picking off passes and like his like transition defense and stuff, like he reminds me at this point of like a guy who isn't a cornerback in football, but he's a safety. And he's like one of those safeties that just freaking makes plays. Like he just has a nose for the ball. And it feels like that, while, it's not going to help him get on the court in games that matter, will probably help him get on the court quite a bit once the Pistons at, 19 and 50, or 40 hit like April and March. And it's like, well, it's time to see what Ron has in a full like starting role. So, I mean, odds of him playing or odds of him mattering this year in like a larger sense are low, but there's no reason to worry about that because it's not like we're trying to win anything right now.
Well, let's just get ahead of this one too. Blake, if you want to give here just like another mini scouting report, especially on ball. I'm curious what you think about Ron Holland because he did, like Brady, you said, he was played in that role quite a bit there with the Ignite. But let's get ahead of the Asar Thompson comparison because for me, I don't really think it's all that fair. They're very different players, even though both aren't good shooters. I mean, Asar is a worse shooter, and there's plenty of other offensive and defensive differences as well between these two guys. So, Blake, wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, and then just more broadly, what do you think about Ron Holland as an offensive player, even with the ball in his hands?
Yeah, I mean, he was asked to do a lot for the Ignite, which oftentimes didn't work out well just because of team building and everything like that. Like there was, I don't even want to say this because it just sounds so bad, but there was a game where he had like 10 or 11 turnovers. And I mean, that got better as the season went on. And he was like he knows that is a focus area and something that he had to improve on for everything he was doing on ball. And also just another, like, I really like the Steph Castle fit to Detroit because I thought he could be a secondary ball handler next to Cade, and mainly because I thought Castle was the perfect defender to put next to Cade. But Ron brings probably like better on ball skill, not as good feel, I'd say, but just because of his athleticism, quickness, and his like defensive activity, he's able to like get out and transition super quick, comfortable, just like putting the ball in his hands in those scenarios and just letting him, I guess, just make things happen. It didn't always work out well with the Ignite, but like you guys were saying, he's going to have time to, I guess, grow into whatever his role looks like here. And yeah, really, I think he could be that secondary guy next to Cade. Makes me question like Jaden Ivey, and we already brought up Asar Thompson, but I think it's a super interesting fit.
And so what do we think about, I guess, going back to the rest of the roster, right? I mean, Ron Holland is right now not a shooter. He is a little bit, at least at the Ignite, he was an on-the-ball player. So, you wonder how he's going to transition to primarily being off the ball here in Detroit. Is this a situation where, we think maybe Langdon might be looking to cash in and, maybe go and get a floor spacing 5 or something like that? Does this impact Fontecchio at all as a free agent sticking around, hopefully in Detroit? Like, as far as the rest of the roster goes, what do we think this impact is? And really quickly, before we do that, just the 2 picks that have happened since Ron Holland to Detroit. The Charlotte Hornets take Tijan Solon, and the Portland Trailblazers just took Donovan Clingan. So it sounds like they got their guy, and they didn't have to move up.
I was going to jump in real. Go ahead, Brady.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I mean, this is something that actually, like, our old comment friend Scott FL used to say a lot is like, build a team filled with very good 6'8" guys like Boston did this year, and things will likely work out for you in this draft if you can develop those guys correctly. So like, I don't see why you wouldn't want an Asar, a Holland, a Fontecchio, a Cade. Like, get as many guys like that who can be fluid throughout your lineup 1 through 4 in different spots, and figure out the rest later. Like, the thing about Klingon was like having a priority, asset at starting center and backup center with Duran made no sense to me, because who cares about your backup center, especially when you're a rebuilding team? Like, you should be focused on getting premium wings and premium shooting. And if you get good wings and good shooting, you're going to make the playoffs regardless. I mean, Orlando, they play defense, but they've got great 6'7", 6'8" dudes, and they've got a bunch of guys who can, hit shots from different spots. So like, that's what they need to do, is just keep building this way. And that's how the Pelicans are built, with a bunch of wing players who can do a lot of interesting things, and like, you figure out how to make it work after that. Like, that's the prototype. And I think, we kind of saw that with the way that the Pelicans were built, with like Trey Murphy and Dyson Daniels and Herb Jones. And like, it seems like maybe that's the direction that we're going here too.
Yeah, I think, Brady, something you said, the problem is the 6'8", 6'9" guys, these are all 6'6" guys. Remember when they said Cade was 6'8" coming out, and he was actually 6'6", and Ron Holland's 6'6", and Asar's 6'6", and like, they, I think Asar will play more like a forward, where Ron will probably play more like a wing, in that sense. But again, they're not small. But if you start putting all those guys, 3 through 4, then you're not doing the very thing that we just talked about. And so I do think that's something that, and maybe I'm overplaying that, and when we start putting shoes on all this stuff, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe, whatever. But it does seem like these guys are smaller than, like, they come in smaller than you originally think they would be. And so you're wanting to play them, up rather than, in the front court. And so I just think that is something where it'll be interesting to see how this turns out. I'm wondering, maybe they're viewing Ron as the backup one, like, if he's not like really a shooter, and they want, he's playing on ball reps, would he get reps at the 1 or as a primary creator off the bench if they don't have someone come in like that can start at the 2 and let Ivy run the bench? I don't know. I think it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't come in right away and do that, but it'll be hard to see where they fit all those guys in right now.
Their height doesn't matter to me. They all have 7-foot wingspans, and if you have a 7-foot wingspan at 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", like, how tall your head is doesn't really bother me. And I think, in the end, like, long, rangy dudes, if you get them all playing the right defense, you're going to be, again, it's that Boston formula that, like, we just saw New York overpay to, like, invest in having a bunch of 2, 3, 4 size guys. And, like, don't those guys work? And I mean, and then the other part of this whole thing is, like, Ron Holland is Ron Holland, but like, can we still get into that like Knicks, like Julius Randle thing too? Because like, that would be another thing for the Pistons that I would be into. I know it's polarizing, but like, if we're building this team right now, I'd be freaking into that 100%.
Well, and I think the thing that only gives me pause, like, long term with this, is only the existence of Asar and Duran potentially still being priorities, with Ron Holland still kind of in tow. Like, I feel like you could make it work with one of those two guys, but they're both so bad at spacing the floor that, like, you can't have both of them off the bench because they're going to play together over stretches, and that's just not a tenable solution. But like, just looking at purely Ron Holland, I think it could work out really well with Cade, Ivy, and Holland. I think that trio actually makes quite a bit of sense. Like I was saying earlier, they're all, well, not Cade will kind of get to the line, but Ivy and Holland will get to the line a lot. I do think there's a little bit of upside here for Ron Holland as a shooter one day. Jaden Ivey's already close. Like, he's a streaky shooter. Maybe he can get that to be a little bit more consistent. And, I mean, you got Ivy and Holland both being super athletes there. It's just, like, I feel like they have to make a choice here almost, like, kind of soon even. If Duran or Asar is going to be a piece long term, right? I mean, am I wrong for thinking the analysis process has just been sped up because of this awkwardness?
I don't think it's sped up. I think it's just a matter of like they're going to have to make decisions. They're going to have to make decisions on the players on this historically terrible team. Like, that is the thing we all have to get over, is that like the Pistons were one of the 15 worst teams of all time last year. So like the players they have are not good enough. And like whether you trust that they can get good enough is, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But like we've already seen like little whispers that they're shopping Isaiah Stewart, because Isaiah Stewart is one of those guys who has shown a glimmer of potential and role and like capability for a team that matters. So like, no, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they moved Isaiah Stewart in the next 3 weeks. And like it was to a contender who would be able to put him in the perfect little bubble to maximize the skills he has, because that just hasn't happened here. But like, I mean, again, I think it's like kind of going back to, the start of Troy Weaver's tenure, where it's like, what's he going to do? He's just starting from scratch. Like Trajan's kind of starting from scratch too, even though he has more in the cupboard. Like he's still trying to make something out of nothing. Like it's just he has, some players who have pedigree from the draft, but not pedigree from production really. And so, I mean, I feel like Ron Holland, whether he plays the 3-4 or the 2-3, or maybe they give him a chance at the one, like, I mean, I think you have to look at this roster and say that it's Cade Cunningham 1 and it's Ron Holland 2, and everything else beyond that is white noise, and we don't know what's going to happen, because that's the two guys that we've heard Trajan talk about. Cade publicly, it's the only player he's talked about, and we've seen him draft Ron Holland. So like that to me says 1-2 right there. The rest of these guys are, nebulous kind of.
I think the one thing that makes me feel better about this pick too, as we were talking about, obviously Klingon fell to 7. Portland didn't have to trade up to get him. Charlotte drafted Salon. They didn't make a deal, but no one moved up. So that tells me that Memphis was offering 3 picks, and it might have been 2 of those were second-round picks, right? The rumor that came out earlier. So like, there obviously wasn't a compelling enough package. And I don't know that we got intel that anyone was loving Ron Holland that high. Maybe there was, and we don't know.
Let's get to some of these questions, guys. We've gotten a few good ones, and let's just start here with James Sullivan. Were the Pistons at a disadvantage going into the draft without a head coach, do we think? Or is that – and actually, let's expand this, all right? Does this matter for, free agency too, as Matas Buzelis, you call it there, Kyle, getting drafted to the Chicago Bulls? Sean, curious your thoughts first.
Yeah, I don't think it really has any impact, because head coaches shouldn't drive that much of the decision making. I mean, they can have a take or even a preference, but you can't let that over or supersede sort of what your committed talent evaluators who are supposed to be doing this as a profession are doing and giving you that advice. So I never really thought the lack of a coach would hamper or influence the pick at all, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if anything, it kind of helps, because you're not really like focusing on like, oh, we need this guy to fit this coach's scheme. Like you can kind of get the players you want in place, and then hire a coach that kind of can. Obviously, you want to someone draft players that fit their scheme, but you can kind of pick your coach around like, okay, can this guy make these guys work? So you kind of aren't like tied to like, okay, this guy needs to have 5 shooters on the court, so we need to draft shooters. So like you kind of just focusing on just getting the players that fit with your vision, and then go from there with the coach. So I don't think it really matters that much.
If James Borrego or Sean Sweeney were the coach today, would those two, either Barry Green or like retread coaches, would that compel you to do something different if you're Trajan Langdon? Like, oh, well, I need to get James Borrego this specific. Like, no, like they're not. It's not like you're trying to find the perfect player for Greg Popovich to squeeze in. You know what I mean? Like, there's not like this defined system and everything. Like, whoever comes in here, their job first, and which is why I think it'll be Sweeney over Borrego. Their job is to make these young kids better. So, like, in the end, I think their system and their fit, again, like we've talked about ad nauseum, like doesn't matter, because I think at the end, Trajan Langdon knows what he wants. And once he gets to get the players he wants, he'll find the coach who can make those players.
Yeah, I'm with that as well. I think the timing was super. I mean, the Pistons really kind of just weren't in a position to get a coach in place before this draft happened, with when the Monty Williams decision came down. So I'm not shocked that they didn't rush anything to get a coach in place during or before the draft happened. I know when Monty Williams was hired a year ago, it was before the draft, and there were those reports. I think Monty said it himself that he was told to come in and see Asar Thompson's workout. So, I mean, I think things like that do help if available, especially when you're getting a new coach. But I think Holland worked out for the Pistons. You have all your guys. You have Fred Vinson on the staff now, and I mean whoever else is going to stick around, if anyone from the previous. But they have their notes and everything like that. Anything they uncovered during those closed door scenarios. So I mean, yeah, you want to get a guy in place as soon as possible, but obviously you don't want to rush it either.
I'm reading quotes on Twitter right now, and I'm sure, Sean, you've already heard some of this stuff. It's from Corey Woods from MLive, but Holland said he didn't expect to go to Detroit. It's a huge surprise. He never thought he'd go 5th overall tonight, and he had a workout scheduled, but it never came to fruition, which is hilarious because like we've and as we watched these, because I mean Trajan came in like a month ago, and like what the only workouts that we saw were Salon, Klingon, Jacoby Walter, I think, and somebody else.
Buzelis, right?
Buzelis,
I think Buzelis, yeah.
But and what's funny is like, and this is like not to like call Laz out at all, but like Laz did say that like he's heard that they didn't feel great about the Ignite guys, and like who knows what smoke is from where, but like it's just funny how these situations come up. Like you don't interview a guy, you don't like bring him in to privately work out, and you still take him. Like that's crazy to me as a like executive to just kind of like go on your blind like scouting rapport from seeing somebody on tape and being like, he's the guy, I don't need to see him in person, like or in person like in my building. Like that to me is like kind of a big D move by a first time like decision maker to be like, I don't need to see this guy in our building, like he's gonna fit. So like that's cool to me that like it's just like a confidence swing. Like I might disagree in March when Ron Holland's shooting like 31% from the field, but like here we are on June 26th, and I'm like, this is fucking cool.
Well, what's really interesting about it too is like really late in the process, right? I think ESPN reported it, and I think Sam Vecini mentioned it too, but the rumors coming out were that Ron Holland was not exactly acing his workouts and interviews, and that was why he kind of took a late tumble in a lot of these mock drafts. It makes me wonder where that was clearly a smokescreen, so wonder where that was coming from. I mean, Detroit was kind of a mystery box. No one had a real good vibe on who Langdon liked. Almost every analyst knew that the previous front office really liked Matas Buzelis, but no peep on what Langdon liked. And I almost wonder if that smoke screen about Holland not doing all that great kind of came out of Detroit, tried to dissuade people from running after him. This is all fascinating.
What I will say about the workout stuff is like now agents and players camps can't hold medicals from teams. So that puts these camps in a scenario where if they're trying to steer a player to a certain situation, really the only thing they could do is have their guy decline a workout from somewhere, or say, I'm just going to do a one-on-one, or my guy's not going to work out against this guy. So that stuff like comes into play a bit, but also like because all that is going on and like that's really all the agents can do now. I think it puts teams in a scenario where like you're going to take guys that you don't have in to work out and stuff. Like a ton of teams are doing it. So it's not like in those situations, that's not really a concern to me either.
All right, let's stick on this Pistons conversation really quickly. We've kind of talked about this previously, but let's revisit it. We got like 3 questions here that are all almost touching around the same exact thing. So the moment says, which player on the Pistons roster is more tradable now that we have drafted Ron Holland? Patrick Wickett says, what's going to happen with Jaden Ivey now that we have Ron Holland? Is he going to be on the team at the end of next year? And then our guy Camille Pistons Turkey, always love when you join, man. He says, please tell me a way to maximize this roster because he can't. So, Blake, let's just throw this over to you. I mean, take whichever one of these you want, but what does this mean for, Jaden Ivey? How do they maximize this? How do they build from here, basically? What's coming next?
I mean, obviously you have to address shooting. Like, it seems most likely, and I think this could have been inferred from Langdon's press conference too, free agency was probably the more likely path for that. And if you're just looking at the history on what New Orleans did while he was there, I definitely have to wrap my brain around it a little bit more on what it means for some of the younger players on the Pistons. I'm not sure if the pick of Ron Holland necessarily means they're going to rush to move on from one of them. I mean, you just got to see what it looks like after free agency, who they go out and get to help space the floor and also protect the rim, whether that player is a starter or coming off the bench. My gut is telling me maybe Jaden Ivey is the one that's more than likely the odd man out, just because I think when Ivey was picked, and I mean, in his couple seasons here, we've seen him as ideally or hopefully the number 2 to Cade. And I think that's the role that Holland steps in. I don't think, like, you could probably try playing them 3 on the floor together, but obviously the other 2 players certainly need to space the floor. You can't have Asar Thompson out there as well. But I can just see Ivy being shopped around a little bit more because he probably has more upside as a primary or secondary scorer and ball handler to other teams around the league, where it seems like right now the Pistons are probably betting on Cade and Ron Holland to be those 2 guys for them.
Yeah, I think that I would be very concerned if I was Jaden Ivey, only because if you look at the skill sets of both Ivey and Holland, there's a lot of overlap in both what they do very well and what they struggle with. So it's hard for them to coexist on the floor, would be my guess. I mean, when I'm looking at Ron Holland's sort of archetype or just what the numbers are saying, he's a guy that can drive to the rim without a screen, just like Jaden Ivey, but he's taller and plays much better defense. So, like, where does that leave Jaden Ivey within this sort of roster construction and the future of the team? I don't know. I mean, I think I trust Jaden Ivey's shot to develop a little bit more than I trust Ron Holland's, not knowing much about Holland. But unless Ivey turns into a very reliable shooter, I just don't see where the future is with both those players on the roster. Because you want one guy that can get his own and maybe has an iffy handle, maybe has some decision-making problems, to have 2 of those guys with those problems, but then the exact same elite skill. I don't see that fit.
I'll just take the other end of that, actually, because the more I've been thinking about it, the more I feel as though like Jaden Ivey is actually the safe one, more so than Asar or even Duran. Just because, I mean, Sean, like you said, I think that their skills overlap quite a bit, but their skills overlap in spaces where it really pays to be good at. And I feel like it would be a really, really nice fit if Jaden Ivey's shot can improve, to have Cade Cunningham surrounded by 2 kind of guard wing players who can get to the rim at will. They don't need help. And Cade's going to give him a lot of help, right? Because he's going to create for himself. But Ivey is a much better secondary playmaker, I would say, than Ron Holland is. Ron Holland maybe has a little more scoring juice potentially. I mean, I'm not even sure about that. But I think that those 3 could end up playing together very well as Cade kind of being the initiator and then letting those two just attack on the other end of the court whenever Cade creates an advantage. Or, when you need a bucket and you need someone other than Cade to get it to you, Ivy or Holland could go do that. I mean, those aren't overlapping roles. It's almost like a magnifier, right? Where Asar can't do that, Duran can't do that, but these two can, and you need multiple guys that fill that role. So I actually like all three.
Yeah, I guess I'm more concerned about not their overlapping skill so much as their overlapping deficiencies. That's kind of what concerns me, because they don't have an out without a shot, and so they're going to be forced to put the ball on the floor, and that's when a lot of mistakes tend to happen. And this franchise shot itself in the foot a lot the last 2 years because of mistakes from young players. So it's just, how do you balance it? Who sees the floor? Who shares the floor? How do you move forward with everyone here?
Yeah, I think that's part of my concern and it's not going to be a concern right away. Because I think if you have a coach that can stagger and kind of try to minimize those overlaps, that's a coach's job right now. And even if the shots come together, yeah, there is some overlap there. And quite frankly, how do you make this roster work? It's going to be slow. It's not going to be quick. How they do this. I do think the Tobias Harris to Detroit smoke is real. And I don't think it's going to be for $30 million a year. I think they'll be able to get him at $20 million, for 2 years, something like that. He clearly has ties and wants to be in Detroit. And so maybe he's, if he's willing to, I don't think there's gonna be much of a market either way. So I think that's someone who comes in and does help balance some of this, like the spacing issues. Because then you have him and Fontecchio that you can have in any lineup just to keep some spacing on the floor. So that's just something that I think he fills a lot of pieces. And then if you go get Hartenstein and you're able to push, Duran to the bench, you have Stu. Yeah, I think there's you can put some spacing on the floor with these guys. But yeah, overall, I don't think, and this is never going to be the case. Sorry, it's a little long-winded, but I've been talking about this for 2 or 3 years now. I'm gonna have a couple articles written, just things that we talk about on Twitter. Like, you're never gonna keep all the guys you draft. Most teams, contending teams, have 2, maybe 3. And the only teams that had more than that are like the Spurs and the Warriors, and they're anomalies, right? That's like it's the gold standard of development. So like eventually these guys get consolidated and shipped out, and so we can't lose sleep over that. I'll be bummed when Ivy goes because the Detroit ties, but it's gonna happen. Like these guys didn't even draft. This regime didn't even draft these guys. So especially so, I would expect before sooner rather than later, a lot of these guys are getting consolidated and shipped out to build a roster that makes more sense around Cade.
All right, here's my thing with Jaden Ivey, guys, and Sean, Justin. I'm curious for you guys to jump in on it, but I really think he was just horribly misused last season. Go back to how he was used at Purdue when he really excelled, when he created this narrative that he could have been even like a number 2 overall pick, not just the number 5 overall pick. He was not the point guard. He did not have the ball in his hands the entire time. They were running him on off-ball actions, running him through, having him snake through screens, Iverson cuts, anything to get him into a rip-and-go scenario. And on top of that, the fast break as well. And obviously he did a lot in the pick and roll too. Like this wasn't something that he never did before. But his primary mode of attack was off the ball, quick decision, quick actions. He gets to Detroit, and that's what they started him off at when Cade was healthy his rookie year. Dwayne Casey was using him in that way, and he looked pretty dang good at it. Then Cade goes down, and Ivy, for a little bit, played more so that same role next to Killian Hayes. But as the season progressed, we saw Ivy initiate more and more offense to just try to expand his horizons in that way. Well, when Dwayne Casey leaves and Monty Williams comes in, there was not much designed for Jaden Ivey to do. There was not a lot of off-ball movement that came with his role when he was off the bench or when he was a starter. Pretty much the only designed actions we got for Jaden Ivey was pick and roll. And Like I'm not saying that he can't excel next to Cade Cunningham as a primarily pick and roll guy. Like, I think it's possible, but that's not playing to his strengths. That's not playing to what got him to be the number 5 overall pick in that draft. So I don't buy into this whole he needs the ball thing. I think that's a product of misuse more than anything else. But I mean, if you guys agree, disagree, let me know, please.
I definitely agree. And I think some I've issue from last season is just how it's all started with the season. Like he had positive momentum coming from his end of his rookie season based on like how he was being used and stuff. And then comes in the training camp, he's coming off the bench for Killian Hayes. And I think some of it's just like a confidence issue. Like he just never fully got his confidence back after just how the beginning of the season started. I think that's part of the problem. Because I mean, he was making strides like even like in the mid range, like his rookie year. Like obviously he came in 0 mid range game whatsoever, and he started making some strides during his rookie season. And then last season it just looked like he couldn't make anything in the mid range. And it seemed like some of the strides he made as rookie just went away. And obviously I know sophomore slumps are a thing too, but I think part of it, I think there's a world where he's obviously not being used fully correctly, but I think him and Cade can exist together and play well together. And I just think hopefully with a new coach coming in and more of a directive to kind of really see if Cade and Ivy work together, hopefully he can get some of his confidence back and just like recapture some of the things he did. And if he doesn't, then obviously this pairing is not going to work long term. But yeah, I think that's just part of it. It's just, yeah, he seems like like obviously someone that knows what it takes. Obviously with his mom being a coach, he has the attitude for it. It's just, again, with the confidence thing that really kind of hurt his whole sophomore years. Hopefully, like I said, just getting a fresh slate, maybe that'll get him back going. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. Like I said, I don't think he was being used a lot better his rookie year than he was last year. I think that's a huge part of what the Jaden Ivey issue is right now.
And I think that can all be true. But even at his best, is he the right archetype to put next to Cade is the question. Long term, and how long is it going to take him to get there? Like those are the kind of concerns that and I agree. I think he got poorly misused last year, big time, and that didn't help things. It is one of those. It's another one of those questions though. Like even at his best, is it the right fit next to him? And was that even the point? Like you draft Ivy because he's the best player available, and you maximize him, and hopefully you can turn him into the player that fits best with your best player. So I think that's what will be interesting going forward.
All right, open question to the group then, because I've never quite fully had this argument explained to me. But why would Jaden Ivey not be on paper a good fit next to Cade Cunningham? Like you're looking at a guy who gets to the rim at a high rate. Even this past year where he wasn't he started hotter than at the rim percentage wise than he ended up finishing at. But on the season, he's at 66% from at the rim on finishes. That's pretty dang good. Could be better, should be better. Hopefully it does get better, but that's already a good rate. He gets to the free throw line. He's not a bad shooter, shoots in the mid 30s, low 30s. And he's a good ball handler, secondary creator, right? He's not a guy that you maybe want to be full-time a point guard running the show, but when something's created for him, he can create for others as well. He can create comfortably out of a pick and roll. Like, why is this guy not a good fit next to Cade?
I think it comes down to the shooting a little bit. That's one of the things. Like I think he's a streaky shooter, and if defenses don't play him like a shooter, that does limit some of the spacing that he can create gravity wise. The biggest thing for me is defense. Like if you don't want Cade guarding the best player, like the best, like the point guard or the best guard on the other team, so that he can be your offensive engine. Which that's a whole nother conversation we should talk about, because I don't think heliocentric offenses work in the NBA, period. And so we need to, if that's the plan, we might as well just jump ship at this point. Yeah, you can live with Eastern Conference Finals and never more than that because you're never going to get all the way through. But so I think that's my biggest question is with Ivy's defense, can he be the guy next to Cade? Now, does that work if you have crazy good defenders at the 3 and the 4, or the 3 in a ungodly like rim protector at the 5? Maybe you can get away with that. But that would be my biggest hesitancy. I don't think his offensive upside is big enough to outweigh the lack of defense and the pressure it'll pull off of Cade on the defensive end.
Yeah, I want long-term a defender. When the Pistons selected Ivy, I had some hope about his potential as someone that could grow defensively. Maybe that still exists, but it's been the most disappointing part about year 2 for both Ivy and Duren is their lack of development defensively, whether that's because they can't do it or because the team was such a mess behind Monty Williams and they just couldn't lock in. That's for Trajan Langdon to figure out. But if you're talking to me about long-term, I want a defender next to Cade to take some of that pressure off.
That's why I was so high on Castle in this draft, because I think there's a element of it of you obviously don't want Cade to have a huge defensive assignment night in and night out. So I think putting a good first, hopefully a really good perimeter defender next to Cade will really just help him out on that end. Ideally, one who can make things happen on both ends. And yeah, like exactly what Kyle said. The thing of it is, for me, is Ivy's shot hasn't developed yet how we've wanted it to. Not saying that could never happen, but the primary thing to me is defense. I think for it to work, you have to have some perimeter defender that you can stagger between that pairing, however else you want to manage it.
Do I sound better?
I
have a thought.
Yes.
Do I sound better? Okay,
Hey,
cool. Hang on. All right, sorry, I took my auto tune off. The thing is, everyone's correct. I agree with everything that we've said about the like nitpicks of Jaden Ivey, and I think the defensive thing is big because, again, like forcing Cade to carry that load offensively and defensively is too much. But last year, Jaden Ivey got to the rim at will. Like, he can get there. His speed is good. He doesn't have the like break you down type of dribble moves. But once he gets that head of steam, he's there. He finished 43% of his shots at the rim. Killian Hayes, who was obviously like our nightmare for years because he couldn't make a shot at the rim, was 41%. So like, to put it into perspective, Jaden could get there. He couldn't finish it. And like, that is something that like theoretically you can finish or improve, but it's also the same thing we've talked about with Cade, where it's like, well, Cade can't draw fouls, but he can improve that. And like, we're still waiting for that like to kind of happen. And it's not a guarantee. It's kind of like you go back to these guys and it's like, well, he can't shoot, but we can teach him to. It's like, sure, in theory, we can do all of these things. And like, that's why it's hard to quit on Ivy, because like, if he could finish those shots at the rim and make 47%, which is just like a good, not, I think the best number was like TJ McConnell, like 53% this year. So like, if Ivy's making like a
Brady, real quick, where can I just ask where the numbers are coming from? Because Basketball Reference very much disagrees with everything.
This was StatMuse killing. Oh, this is from the field. Never mind. I'm looking at this is the wrong stat. I thought I had rim shot. What did you have?
I can give you so shot distance at the rim. Jaden Ivey was 65.7%. Shot type layup was 55%.
55% conversion rate. He was or that was the percentage
on layups. No, conversion. Yeah, he made 55% of his layups. He made 66% of at the rim attempts. Neither of those are elite, though. To your point.
Oh well, I take back what I said. I was looking at bad numbers.
I mean, I think for me, the most frustrating thing about Ivy's season last year was he was playing really well and his role was not conducive to his talents. And I don't think that his odd role lent to his efficiency that he displayed in that first couple months of the season. When the team started to crumble, and I think when strained relationships within the coaching staff sort of got to him, I think Ivy just had a terrible, terrible end to the season. I think he regressed in every area, and I think he just was not he had all of this opportunity because he was basically one of the only healthy players, and he did the opposite of take advantage of it. He basically fumbled it completely. And that's really disheartening. But that doesn't mean those first couple months of the season didn't happen. I'm actually more bullish on Ivy than I think a lot of Pistons fans generally, because I do think his shot will develop and continue to improve, albeit slowly. I don't know about his defense, but I saw a lot of improvement as a driver and decision maker in how he was going to try and score. He still has trouble passing the ball in those situations, but I think he's really on his path to develop into a lethal rim attack guard that makes quality decisions, high efficiency or high enough efficiency at the rim, and draws fouls. And, drawing fouls is a definitive NBA skill that any team can use. So I generally like Ivy on the offensive end in his profile for the Pistons. It's just the defense that really concerns me. It's the passing that marginally concerns me because he just has to be better at that in general. But, there are things to like about Ivy's game.
Blake, let me ask you this question. So we've talked about two things here. About Kyle mentions that the heliocentric type offense isn't really a great system to run. We've talked about Jaden Ivey, if he could be a better defender, that would take pressure off of Cade to be a good defender when he already has all this offensive volume. Is there a world where between either I guess, of Jaden Ivey or Ron Holland, to kind of come back to the pick, but one of those two guys becoming a good enough offensive player where we can now demand that Cade Cunningham is actually a halfway decent defender on the other end because his offensive load will be lessened and he's not carrying the entire fate of the team on his shoulders and still losing when he drops 40?
It's tough because I feel like you want Cade obviously he's going to have a huge offensive role, but some of these like Holland or Ivy, if they have more of the scoring punch and can lessen it a bit from Cade, like maybe there's a world that happens. I'm just not necessarily sure if like the team will want to go down that route because one of them, sure, I think if you're keeping Ivy and Holland and playing them next to Cade in your starting lineup, if you're going to have both of them take stuff off Cade's plate offensively, it's like you're just like, how much is there to go around, I guess. So that's what concerns me. Like maybe one of Ivy or Holland it starts coming off the bench and is staggered into the starting lineup, leading the second unit. I just think long term, if you're adding those two guys to take stuff and like opportunities and usage off of Cade's plate, it might be too much where Cade isn't doing as much or asked to do like as much as you want him to.
All right, I gotta ask the follow-up. Why is it bad to have multiple ball handlers like that? Multiple ball handlers, multiple scorers. I feel like that's a good thing, right?
Yeah. It's not like bad to have multiple ball handlers. Like successful teams have that. I just think if you're talking about play ending guys, if you have three of them who are all like hunting for shots, scoring, like obviously you want that too, but does there become a point where it's taking too much away from other areas that are more efficient? Like I think there's a world it could work. And also I think really if you do keep Cade, Ivy, and Holland and are playing them next to each other, I think the big spot is a swing position for this team. Ideally, depending on how Ivy and Ron Holland's shot develops, you want that player to be able to space the floor. But more importantly, you want someone that's going to be that last line of defense, your rim protector, which is still like a question mark with this roster. So that is also really like excited to see what happens if you are going to use these three guys alongside each other moving forward.
So I guess one thing for me, just thinking out loud, like, is there a world where Holland isn't even like playing much early on? Like, because if the goal is to see if the previous young players we already have work, and obviously the goal is to add some veteran presence as well, is there a world where Holland just maybe doesn't even play much early on and possibly his G League time? I know he spent last year in the G League as well, but like I know he's a top 5 pick, and that generally doesn't happen much. But I'm just thinking, like, in the scheme of trying to figure out how everybody works together, is there a world where they just don't play Holland
I don't think
at
he
the beginning
should.
of the season and kind of evaluate what's already here and then kind of go from there?
He shouldn't play. I mean, if you look at their team right now, and I'm like looking at like just a rough like depth chart, like you have Cade as the only like point guard per se. Then you have this off guard mix of Ivy, Sasser, Grimes, and like Sasser's the guy who, like, honestly, I feel like has no place on this team for anybody in the, like, discussion. Really, he's just kind of there. And you've got Fontecchio, obviously, or probably Asar, Holland in that like small forward range, and you've got Stu, no backup 4, Duran, no backup 5. Like, all they have is wingy guard guys. I just don't see where Holland plays, or if he does play, like, does that make Grimes expendable? Like, because I don't know. I don't see where Fontecchio, Asar, and Holland fit unless you want to throw one of those guys at power forward, which I don't think would probably go well for you. And like, again, at the 2, I'm not sure any of those guys can handle playing shooting guard, because I don't think they can handle the ball well enough to, like, not put you at a disadvantage. So like, it's interesting. And I think that's where you're going to see this team make moves, is that, like, do these guys all, can they even fit together? And not that the fit matters, but like just developmentally, like, is there something that makes sense? Because like looking at it right now, like, they're kind of short, big bodies, which like none of these guys check that box.
And then another thing of note, just as we're catching up, Langdon did mention number of agents not wanting to send their players to work out for Detroit. Obviously, I think he feels comfortable saying that because he's not the one that put them in the situation in which agents didn't want to send them there. But that is just interesting. So he said that contributed to partly why they didn't have a workout for Holland. But also that strategy played a part, which sounds more like saving face than the real answer. But so just to note that was interesting as some things that he's shared so far in his presser.
Some other quotes that I can read off here said that he's high character and a great human being who works his butt off. Talking about Ron Holland, of course. Let's see. He said he checked a lot of boxes except for shooting. He is one of the highest upsides in the draft. We hired Fred Vincent for a reason, to take chances. If his shot hits, he's going to be a real player. So I guess for all the conversation about if that Fred Vincent hire, if that was going to matter for the draft, Langdon's at least citing it as an important factor here. So, I mean, yeah, like Ron Holland, if the jump shot comes around, where would we be on him? Like, is he really? How high does the ceiling go, I guess?
I mean, we've said that about a lot of Pistons prospects in the last 10 years, so I don't want to discount what a big lift a shot can be. But in reading the people that do actually support Ron Holland as one of the sort of tier 1 prospects in this very strange draft, I think what I'm seeing that is encouraging is not just if the shot comes around, but people who believe there are signs that his shot is actually pretty good, and it just was a low volume shot that, there was no efficiency in the G League, but there was no anything in the G League. And it was like not such a large sample that you can like take it to the bank. So, I mean, I'm seeing things about how his sort of floater has touch, and sort of those soft mid-range shots have good touch and arc that makes you think that the form is workable. And I was looking at the Hollinger stuff, and he said that it's really just some mechanics that are not sort of the break it all down and rebuild it type thing, just more like things in his shot that need to be tweaked and fixed. And because he shoots so much outside the context of terrible G League Ignite games that there's people in the league that have confidence that his shot's pretty workable. I don't think that means 40% on the line, but I also don't think we're talking about a Killian Hayes or a Stanley Johnson type situation here.
Is it fair?
Well, a lot of his threes were self-created too, right? Wasn't that part of the narrative?
I think everything was self-created, and that made people very excited and very like, well, these numbers are dog shit.
Is it
Real
fair to
quick.
say?
Oh,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, I was gonna say, is
No,
it
no.
fair to say because I thought Gerald Wallace was kind of like this would be a great outcome for Ron Holland. Like, he's not as much of a Gerald Wallace was more of a big man as a three-er type guy than he was a guard. And I think I can see guard stuff with Ron. But like on the low side, is he just Josh Jackson? Like, have we seen this before? This like sketchy jump shot, very athletic, like all the tools. Like maybe he's not as much of a dummy as Josh was, but like is that kind of like the range of possibilities? Like you could get like an all-star caliber wing who can give you like very, very good defensive like impact and some offense and rebounding too, or he can be just a guy who has all these tools and like just is like, you know what I mean? I don't know how you describe Josh, just a guy, but like that feels like it's a wide range. And I think that's like what we've been talking about the whole time is like, if you can shoot, you can make it work in today's NBA. And like Gerald Wallace was never a great shooter. Like he was like 33%, 34 at his best, but like he made it work in other ways. But like, yeah, I mean, what's the hallmark for like, what can Fred Vinson do to make this kid like a really good player? Is it 35% from three and then he still goes and he's a foul magnet offensively and like he gets to the line and like, because that's the thing too, is like we always talk about 3-level scorers and like I don't know if Ron Holland can shoot in the mid-range or create that way, but like if you can draw fouls like he can, I feel like it kind of makes that less important because you can just bully your way in. It's kind of like what Anthony Edwards does. He just, when he was young, he would just bully his way in there and he'd get to the line. And that was like his bread and butter when his jumper wasn't as developed as it is today, as we saw in the last 2 months in the playoffs.
Well, I want to comment on two things too. That Langdon, at least Langdon is saying Ron can guard 1 through 4 on defense. He called him an elite defender. And so it seems like more than his offensive upside, it was the defense that really drew him. And they believe that they can get his offense where it needs to go. It's just an interesting, because the press conference kind of made it sound like, at least the conversations after the press conference from some of the beat writers, he kind of led on that like defense can be taught and it's about want to, and you need to get shooters and you need to get offensive players. And then everything we're hearing right now, he's saying you need to get elite defenders, and everything, as long as they work out offensively, that's the way to go. So like, it's just an interesting little, I don't want to call it a smoke screen or kind of like talking out of both sides of his mouth, but we're still going to see, I think it's going to be interesting to see how he builds this out. Now, both things can be true, and it might be one talking about the draft and one talking about free agency for sure. But I think that'll be interesting to see the building philosophy. I like this. I'd rather see some of that elite defense. If you really believe you can teach a jump shot, I think that's easier to teach than in defensive instincts, but we'll see how that plays out. The other thing I want to make note of, if that's we can anyone want to comment on that? And there's another thing I want to bring up from the press conference.
Well, I was just going to bring
the only
up,
thing I would say,
one quote. But
sorry,
go ahead, Sean.
Just real quick. I think that Trajan's comments at the presser really indicate what his free agency plans are and his rotation building plans are. So I think that is another signal that Ron Holland is not earmarked for a very large role in the beginning, and that everyone else's role is, outside of Cade and probably Fontecchio, if I'm being honest, is TBD. So I think like he knows he needs to add shooting, he knows he needs to add spacing, and he knows the avenues in which he can add that, and that the draft is not the place to fill in specific gaps. It's to grab who you think you can build into the best two-way players possible. And I mean, I think that's the obvious it's a big swing, but that's the swing on Ron Holland, is that you have these nascent elite defensive skills, elite driving skills, and putting everything else together and building a whole player out of it.
So building on that, right? Talking about building out this roster. This is one of the last quotes from James Edwards III's Twitter feed, but he says, Langdon said, quote, "We have cap space. We're getting calls. We want future assets more than picks in this draft," end quote. So obviously we're done tonight with the Pistons. They're not going to move back in and select tonight. They're probably not looking for more second round picks either by the sound of that. But that also does mean that they are open for business with guys that are on this roster. And man, it's going to be really, really interesting to see, over the next week and a half here, kind of the next dominoes that fall. Because that quote, I think, is telling.
Yeah. And for those people who are still upset about the trade, not being able to trade back, one thing Langdon said as well in the presser, said there was calls leading up to the draft and the calls dried up when the pick actually came. Quote, "You talk to an agent about who you like and they start talking." So it sounds like they let out they were interested in Ron, and then the team's desperate for Klingon. Once they started getting their intel, realized that Klingon was going to be there when they were picking, is what it sounds like. So there was really no offers on the table for anyone for a trade up. It sounds like once we got to tonight. Intriguing. Again, you're taking that. That's a direct quote from Langdon himself, and so I think you can kind of take that for what it is. It's interesting that he's calling out potentially Ron's agent. Probably not a good way to start that relationship, but we'll see how that goes.
Or Klingon's agent. Or Klingon's agent.
Yeah, he might not even be talking about himself. He might be talking about Portland with an impetus to trade up, but realizing they didn't have to. And then Memphis with an impetus to trade up and realizing I could have Klingon at this price in future picks, or I could take Zach Edey for free. And just, by the time the draft hit, everyone knew how that draft board was going to fall. So they had already pre-baked their choices.
These teams, I think these teams know, these executives know what's going on well before even, like, there's a reason that, like, when Woj gets it, like, it's 2 minutes early, like, these guys know what's going to happen well before. And that's why there's so much time to negotiate these deals and figure this stuff out and talk through it. But just looking at stuff around and, like, obviously all the stuff about Ron and, like, Langdon didn't say it specifically, but, like, I think he kind of hinted at, like, the environment was not great for him outside of the fact that he played against, grown men. And, like, I'm sure the same is going on for Buzelis and, like, the discussion in Chicago around him. But, like, boy, Jason Hart, the coach of G League Ignite, like, probably, like, the worst possible outcome for him to have coached this team such a disastrous year, and his guys still go high in spite of his team and the performance and stuff, and then the program to be like, it was so bad we just closed it down. Like, of all the, like, culmination of things, like, that guy, I think he's at, like, Kentucky or something now, but, like, that's a pretty crazy way to, like, flame out with, like, a program that, like, 4 years ago was, like, hot shit. Like, when we were first seeing Ignite, it was like, wow, the future of basketball. And now it's like, what a disaster that was, which is just wild to think that, like, 4 years, something so revolutionary could go so poorly and still produce guys in the top 10 like this, or top 11.
Yeah, I'm bummed about the Ignite, honestly. Like, it's one of those things that it makes so much sense on paper, and it's just a bummer that it didn't work. I mean, they did try to have that balance of these prospects paired with veterans, but I feel like that was the only philosophy. Like, there wasn't much roster building construction around it. But yeah, I saw Langdon also said that he likes some of the G League players because they've spent a year playing against grown men. So it's an interesting project that I'm bummed we won't really see players like that. But I think there are still going to be some G League opportunities for some prospects who want to go that route. Like, there's some Ignite players who are prospects for next year that are looking for places to go, and they can't play college, so they have to go overseas, maybe another G League team, or just find a different opportunity. So, man, I just wish it worked.
All right, let's one more question here. This one's from Big Cheese, asking, can Asar and Ron Holland play together if the Pistons have a stretch five?
Oof.
I would say. Oh, go ahead.
I'll say quickly. I think Holland's shot is the swing here. Like if he can shoot it, like I buy Holland developing as a shot maker much more than Asar. But if that doesn't come along, you need to play them with a stretch five, certainly, and everyone else needs to be able to shoot the ball. And I'm not even sure, like, if Holland develops into league average, like maybe he should still be playing with a stretch five as well.
Yeah, I think it's really about the other three or the other two players on the floor. Because, I mean, with a stretch five, if you have Cade and you have an actual reliable high volume 3-point shooter at the two, then really it allows Asar to play sort of that chaotic free safety offensive role. And then you still have avenues for Holland to be sort of a cutter and driver in ways that, as long as they're attacking from different parts of the floor and the ball keeps moving, I think it could happen. It's not an impossibility because they can start their drive so far from the basket that you can start to create a bit of havoc. But it does require not just a stretch five, but a stretch one and a stretch two.
The problem I have with this core as it is today on June 26th, like, I don't know that we'll even be able to call it the core in August 1st, but like, can you legitimately play Cade, Ivy, Asar, Ron, and Jalen Duren on the floor at the same time? Like, they can't share the floor together, which I understand, like, it doesn't matter right now, but like, it kind of still does. Like, you have to, and like, the other thing too is like stretch fives. Like, I feel like that gets mentioned a lot. Like, there are only so many good stretch fives. Like, stretch fives are not that unicorn archetype still does not grow on trees. Like, there's a reason there's only like 8 really good ones that exist. So like, it's one of those deals where like the 4 has to shoot the hell out of the ball and the 2 has to shoot the hell out of the ball. And if those 2 can shoot well and Cade can be that 36% 3-point shooter, then I don't think the other 2 guys have to be able to shoot. But like, hopefully Ron or Asar are one of those guys who can, shoot a little bit, because having 2 non-shooters is better than what they've been doing lately. But like, I just feel like it's easy to say that you can go acquire shooting anywhere, but like, you can acquire shooting at certain positions anywhere, but like, you can't just go get super large dudes who shoot threes. Like, those are not just like readily available anywhere. Like,
yeah, I think like theoretically, like if Stu's your stretch five and just looking at the current roster, like he's still someone defenses don't really respect as a shooter, even though he shot 38% last year on like 5 attempts. Like, they weren't guarding him on the perimeter most of the time. So like, if you have to actually go and get like an actual stretch five and still have shooters at the 1 and 2 if you're even going to try to pull it off. But yeah, and like with the current roster, Stu is probably your stretch five, but like, he's not it's not doing what you need for Asar and Holland to work together. So yeah, it's gonna be someone they have to get probably in free agency, but like they're rare. They don't not just readily available as free agents. So
just really quickly before I throw it over to you, Kyle, Isaiah Stewart not being guarded as a 3-point shooter, to me, I think that's entirely subject to him playing the 4. Because the reason teams still didn't really pay attention to him, at least to my eye, is because you could legitimately help like crazy off Isaiah Stewart and then fly out and past him, and it just does not matter because he can't put the ball on the floor. So like getting into the 5-on-4 situation on defense, really not a problem if Isaiah Stewart is dribbling the basketball. You've probably won that possession. And that's how teams guarded him. Like the number of times that it would just be a flyby and Isaiah Stewart would either try to drive or kind of take a sidestep 3 and miss. Frequent, happen a lot. So I think if you play him as a 5 with more ball handlers around him, he's going to get guarded like the 38, 39% 3-point shooter that he is. But if we continue down this path of Isaiah Stewart as a 4, like the fact that he just can't dribble the basketball really, really limits him. So Kyle, I cut you off, but I had to get that in there.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, Wes. It just the fact that he was playing the 4 instead of the 5. That's like verbatim what I was going to point out. And just also what else is on the roster too. Like that's just a reality. If they don't have to, right? If you know Cade, all you have to do is stop Cade, and even if Stu hits the occasional kick out to him, or if you know for a fact that Ivy's never going to hit that kick out when he drives, like you don't have to respect it. Like that's part of it, right? And I think, and it wasn't like he wasn't shooting the volume enough. There was a stretch where he wasn't shooting as confidently, but I think like, and so that's something he will have to improve on, is just continue to chuck it when it's like you can't let it dip. You have to shoot like you're a shooter to get that respect. But yeah, I don't see that being as much of an issue. Now, I will say, if you're leaning on Stu to be your stretch 5, which I don't think he should be your starting 5, but if he's going to be your stretch 5 and that's the route you're going, then you need to get a 4 who will bring that weak side rim protection to help him. He's a decent rim protector, but he's not elite by any means. And so having someone who can come on the backs, and now Asar can kind of do some of that, I think. And so I think that's where you can potentially make that work. But again, now we're talking about anytime you play anyone with size, that you're really giving up a lot. I think, yeah, so to kind of answer this question is like, can they play together with a stretch 5? Maybe. It would still be tough. And I still think then you also need a 4 at that case. You'd move Asar up to the 2 maybe, and you have a 4 that can shoot, or you need another shooter. So you can have a stretch 5 and you have K, but then I think you need one more shooter in there if you're going to put them together.
I just have always found it so funny that like, and I've been like a Stu guy since they drafted him, like, and I've never really wavered on that, but like the guy who shot 49% from the field, 38% from 3 on pretty good volume, 75% from the line, and like plays defense is the one that everybody likes to shit on. And I'm just like, this is the only functional basketball player this team has. And like, he is not a star by any means, but like, why don't we collectively think of Fred Vinson as somebody who's going to elevate this guy? Like, Fred Vinson's a shooting coach. He doesn't just teach you to hold the ball like this. Like, I think that skill, work will help on some of the stuff that you mentioned, Wes, where it's like, does the shooting coach help you be able to adjust to those closeouts and then make those moves? And like, does he work hard enough? And I think he does. I mean, I think he's a really hard worker to be able to develop that, at least that one counter, to be able to break it up. Because like, I think there's a universe where Isaiah Stewart can give you a very similar impact to the game, like PJ Tucker did at the end of his career when he was still like a competent player, not like the guy he is today. But like, I think he can still be that. And I don't understand why we, not this room, but collectively the fan base, is so quick to just be like, he sucks. Because in reality, like, he's one of the only players they've had since they got rid of Jeremy Grant who has not sucked, like, just, point blank. So like, I just always find that funny. And it's like, we're always looking to replace him and stuff. And like, he's probably better as the backup stretch 5, but like, I still think he's a contributor to any team in the NBA, good, bad, anything in between.
Well, just quickly before I throw the question over to Sean here, but literally the only counter he needs is a 1 dribble pull up. Like that's well within the shooting coach's range to teach. That's all he needs. 1 dribble pull up. Guy flies out, boom, mid range, done. I don't know if he could do it, but he can't right now, but maybe in the future. Sean, did you have any thoughts here on Sarr and Holland with a stretch 5?
I mean, I think that if you look, I guess what I would want to say is just a little bit of soft pushback on something Brady said earlier about how sort of that core unit can't really share the floor together. I think that's true of today, but I think it's sort of like the slow development of young players. If you look at where New Orleans is right now, they don't have a surplus of deadly 3-point shooters. They have some really good defensive wings that have been slowly nursed into being competent reliable, effective 3-point shooters. So, like, if you think that you can turn a couple of these guys into the 36% range, and they can do it reliably and they can do it on decent enough volume, like, you don't have to be a 42% 3-point shooter. You don't necessarily need to have a stretch five. New Orleans does not have a stretch five. They're not the best team in the league, so I don't want to oversell them, but like, they were able to build a competent offense and win a lot of games because they have some dynamic athleticism, some really rangy defenders, and enough reliable scoring and shot making from their like most important players. So if Trajan is looking at how he built New Orleans as the way he wants to build the Pistons, then I can see where he can see a future with most of these guys playing a role in it. That doesn't mean they'll be here forever or long term, but it doesn't mean you have to deal them now. It means you can continue sort of developing those skills, trying to get these guys to improve so that when you're ready to deal them, you're dealing them from a source of strength, a source of them being on the upswing, a source of them having upside among teams that are looking for players with those sort of like defined skill sets that they already have. Plus they can see they're getting better in some of their weakness areas. So, I mean, I think you could have Holland and Thompson and Stewart as 3 bench players, and then you sort of build your starting unit with some more reliable veterans, and you have, Cade, you have Duran, who will magically turn into a defender because I want it, and then you have the semblance of a team.
Well, and we all know that Duran's more likely to become a stretch five than a defensive prospect. So, right, Wes? Didn't we agree that is?
Oh, definitely. The only thing I actually want to add to this is that, like, I get the comparison a little bit between Asar Thompson and Ron Holland, that they're both very athletic wings who have a little bit of potential on the ball, and they're bad shooters. But like, I really just want to remind everyone that there are levels to being bad shooters, right? So remember, Ron Holland last year in the G League against guys that are like borderline NBA competition, creating almost exclusively self-created threes, on 3 attempts per game from 3, he was at 24%. All right, that's not good. That's bad. He shot, 76% from the free throw line on 5 attempts. Okay, that's solid. It's not great, unspectacular. Asar Thompson, this past season against NBA players, creating none of his 3-point looks. All right, he was purely catch and shoot 3-pointers. He took 2 a game, 18%. He shot 2 free throws per game. He shot 59% on those free throws. Like, that is awful. That's horribly bad as a shooter. So, like, yes, if you zoom out and you just say, okay, you have Asar Thompson, you have Ron Holland, they're both wings, they're about the same size, they're great athletes. Like, you could keep doing that. But to say that Ron Holland is also a bad shooter puts him unfairly in this camp of like, it would be a miracle if Asar Thompson exceeds 30% from 3 on good volume in the NBA. I'm not saying it's impossible, but like, the odds of it, historically, the number of players who have been that bad that then went on to get over 30% on good volume is very low. Ron Holland is already like above that. And he did it against borderline NBA competition already. So like, eventually I do think it's possible that they could play together with a stretch 5, but like, understand that the limitation there is not, in my opinion, it is not Ron Holland's fit with Asar Thompson. It's that Asar Thompson just on principle cannot be on the court with not a stretch 5. Like, this isn't a Ron Holland thing. This is an Asar Thompson thing, to me.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think, and that's, again, we're talking lineups, we're talking fit. Let's be clear where this team's at. We're still in asset acquiring mode. and it's a new leader with a bunch of assets that he didn't draft. The draft isn't even finished. First of all, we haven't even gotten to free agency. There's so many more moves, and I know this is the point of the show. This is what we do, right? We're instant reacting with all the information we have right now. And if you tell me in 2 weeks and they still haven't signed anyone who can actually space the floor, okay, we need to have a conversation about that, right? Like, but for now, like, they took a high upswing at a position of need, at a need in terms of this defensive need. Like, it's a thing that the team needed to improve in, and they took a swing on it, and they believe they can develop his shooting, and that's part of the reason why they brought Fred Vincent. If you're taking Langdon at his word, like, this is what they brought him to do. Sean, the one thing I will say is the Pelicans were able to do that because they traded Anthony Davis and they got Brandon Ingram, they got Zion Williams, they lucked into one of the greatest, prospects in the last decade, and they got to trade a second one of those for more things, and so I think that's where it'll be interesting to see how can he make this work, and is he going to be able to make it work without having to trade Cade? And that was something that I remember. And again, we don't need to go down this path too much, but I remember saying that when we drafted him, is wondering, what is he going to be more of the Grant Hill, or is he going to, or is he going to be, is he going to be the one we can build around like Chauncey and have him be here, or is he going to be the Grant Hill that we trade away to actually get the assets to start the next thing? And we're going to find that out in the next couple of years. I hope it's the latter. I hope he's the guy we're going to build around, because we all want that, But man, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. If they can't manage to get more assets by taking on contract and they can't really build out a war chest, I don't know how you, in this NBA, I don't know how you build a team without trading away a superstar first to get the assets to do everything else. If it costs 5 first-round picks to get your 4th best player on your team, that's the free agency, right? Like, Detroit's still going to be stuck in that. So I don't know. That's a bunch of ramblings, but it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And I want to say one more thing about sort of Ron Holland as a shooter. Not that I think he is a shooter, but just to explain like the difference and the severity of small sample size here. I'm looking at sort of Cody Williams stats. Now, I know people are skeptical of Cody Williams as a shooter, but he shot 41% from 3. That means he made 17 threes on the year in 41 attempts. And then the terrible shooter that we know as Ron Holland made, hold on, let me make sure I'm looking at he made 11 threes in 46 attempts. That's such a marginal difference, but it completely changes the narrative on how we talk about and assess these players. Now, I don't think either of them is going to be a three-point shooter in their rookie seasons and probably even year 2. But this idea that I don't want to prejudge Ron Holland. Admittedly, I don't watch G League Ignite games. I don't watch YouTube highlight videos, really. I just rely on what I'm reading about these prospects. But like, I don't want to just presume he's another Killian Hayes or that he's another Stanley Johnson until I see evidence that I'm looking at his shot and it seems irreparably broken. So like, let's take a look, keep an open mind, and then obviously we know that's something that this franchise is prioritizing, building up in its young players and its young wings, because Trajan Langdon did that for years in New Orleans, and his first move as the president of the Pistons was to hire the renowned shooting coach from his former team, because he knows how fundamental that is to developing basketball players. Doesn't mean it's like a magic bullet, but it's part of the calculus of drafting players and building up players and putting together a development program.
No, thank you everyone for joining us and staying on this late. It was great. I mean, the Pistons definitely threw us for a loop a bit. I'm so excited to see how that turns out. And Sean, Kyle, Brady, Justin, thank you for joining and being along for the ride on this long night with us. And we'll be back next week for regularly scheduled programming. You can call us to ask a question on the show and hear your voice on the podcast. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And Sean, special thanks to you for always supporting the show and letting us keep going over at Detroit Bad Boys. Shout out to everyone in the chat and that's listening to the recording of this for all the great questions and talking points. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us here on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you.